Welcome back, everyone, to this next episode of Beyond the Beeps. I am Leah Jayanetti, your host, and I'm so glad to be in your ears, possibly on your computer today, with a very special guest, Val Butler. I have come to know Val over this last year or so, and she's truly been a blessing in my life. And also, as you'll hear today in the conversation, a blessing, a gift, an incredible contributor and energy in the world of infant and maternal health, which is why we're all here. So a little bit about Val before we get into our conversation. She is the manager of something really special called the Alliance for Infant Maternal Health, which is a health and well-being initiative, which was launched here in Miami-Dade County by the Women's Fund of Miami-Dade. She has so much experience in public affairs and advocacy. She now has found her place here as a thought leader, and I love that's her word, but it's absolutely accurate in this community. And she is promoting the interdisciplinary partnership and cross-sector collaboration here in our county. In this current role, she supports AIM, the AIM project, by fostering a collective impact coalition that brings together key stakeholders to address maternal and infant care in Miami-Dade County. She is a proud Miami native and an alumna of Florida International University. And she has a dual bachelor degree in business administration, health service administration as well. And not if that's not enough, a master's of business administration specializing in marketing, which is crucial when we talk about communication. Marketing is key. She continues her career dedicated to the people of South Florida, all of you included. And she is a dedicated public servant for sure. She strives to positively impact each organization and community she encounters with a drive for creating, celebrating, and advocating. It is with great, great pleasure that I introduce the Beyond the Beeps community and the incubator platform to Val Butler. Val, welcome.
Thank you, Leah, so much. And thank you for always providing support and kindness and warmth and also leading the way every day, never giving up. So much appreciation for you.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot. Our guests, Val is also, right, with the guests that join us are also NICU parents. And it was in a moment of collaboration for the Alliance for Infant Maternal Health that I discovered that Val is also a NICU mama. She's the mother of two. She has a 5-year-old Sebastian and a 2-year-old Aurora. Aurora was brought to the NICU. Tell us a little bit about that. What brought Aurora to the NICU?
So Aurora is the
5.
5-year-old, the boss of the family right now. So yes, but I think for me, just as you were saying now, in conversation, being on site at a meeting and realizing, hey, Val is a NICU parent. Um, when you presented to me the first time, I remember the first time we met and we were reviewing just different initiatives. That was a moment for me like, wow, I'm a NICU parent. I think that was the first time I really came to terms with it, mainly because my experience was a unique experience, very contrary to a lot of other people's experience. But that was really when it hit me like, wow, yeah, this was a hugely impactful moment of my life. So I remember I had a completely difficult and unpredictable labor with my daughter. And I remember just firstly being alarmed at all the testing that was done. And, I had read, I did my Googles, I talked to friends and looked at resources. And even then, being in that position when you're recovering yourself and then having all these people doing all these, different evaluations on a child that you've barely gotten to know yourself, it's such a overwhelming experience. So within all those evaluations, her oxygen level was a fraction lower than what is necessary or what would be considered an approved level. Um, And I remember seeing the results, having them explain the results to me, but then them advising me that she needed NICU attention, uh, just because the level of monitoring that would be needed. And I could not process that at all. Especially because in our birth plan, we had such an emphasis on keeping the infant with us at all time, testing, everything being done in the room. And, we were in a hospital where we were privileged to have those wishes honored, and we're privileged to be heard and to have our preferences be respected, which is firstly not a thing that every parent receives. So in that sense, I trusted my physician. I was able to trust the nurses that I had been with throughout my time there. So we were like, okay, we understand. But even then it was just baffling to try to understand the need for higher care.
And Aurora, remind me, how many weeks was she when she was born?
39 weeks, and she was humongous. She was almost 10 pounds. So
Wow.
even, going to the NICU for the first time and, cleaning up and getting a robe on. Also, this is in the time of, transitioning outwards of the pandemic, so it's extra scrubbing,
Yeah.
extra mask, extra everything.
Mhm.
I remember she was crying, and all the nurses would be alarmed because her cry was so loud and she herself was so big, and to walk down that hall, the NICU unit, or the unit that we were in, was only 8 beds. So to walk down that hall and see, delicate babies and, receiving so much care and so much going on, and then to see my giant daughter at the end, just mentally, it was so confusing, and it really made me realize I know nothing of what NICU care is. I know nothing because I think I had this generalized idea that NICU means premature, and that's just the only association I ever knew. So to see that a NICU stay could look or have many different outcomes, or look many different ways, was a huge realization for me, for sure.
Yeah, it's something we have to regularly remind people is that big babies come to the NICU too, right? There's a the adjustment to life is it's a lot going from in utero, mom regulating everything, your parent, your birthing parent regulating everything for you, to switching all that over. There's a lot that has to happen for a baby to exist successfully extra utero. We were just using that word the other day, ex utero.
Yeah.
um, but and I think as mothers, we or parents, when we make it out of the quote unquote woods of preterm, we think, well, that's it, we did it, and so it's an extra kind of wet rag slap in the face of like, whoa, we thought we could put that to rest. I don't know if that was something in your pregnancy or in that period where you were worried about it. Um, you know, I don't know. Was it something that went through your mind that like once you got to that third trimester or once you got to a certain weeks that that kind of concern resolved, or no, you were like a pretty chill pregnant person?
I think, no, I was not chill. I was far from chill. I was far from chill, and I actually, struggle with anxiety here and there throughout my life. And I mean, I've come to a place where I'm able to manage it, and I have the tools and the processes in my life for me that I can use to combat it and deal with it, address it. But I think in that time, I was once again really fortunate to have a physician who knew my history way before I even considered conception or anything. So she knew me. She knows my mental health. She knows what I like. She knows my personality, which that alone makes such a huge difference. But I think after a while, I started finding peace in, the excitement of it. And then I think also the care providers. So my obstetrician office, so it's a team of 3, so you rotate, without throughout the 3. Of course, my lead physician, she's very nurturing, very gentle, and then I think the leader of the practice is very, like, N no games, like, "Let's get this done," you know, "Here's all the information you need," and I remember she helps a lot. I don't even think she would ever know. I should tell her one day, but I remember, probably when I was maybe, like, 36, 37 weeks, that's when I was, like, freaking out. I'm like, "Oh my goodness, I don't know what's gonna happen, da, 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 what where am I gonna be? How am I gonna feel?" Nothing. I couldn't process anything. And she looked me in my eyes and she told me, "One way or another, you're gonna come out of there and with a baby." And I was like, I couldn't process what she was saying. So I was like, that sounds wild, but it was such a simplified way of thinking because pregnancy in itself, birth in itself, there's such complicated, extraordinary experiences that even the most lead experts cannot really process all of it. So it just brought me to a point of acceptance where it's okay not knowing. It's okay to have an experience not knowing what the outcome is going to be, or to allow yourself to be excited, to allow yourself to have faith, to have hope, to be positive. It's okay to allow yourself those experiences. So I think that helped me a lot.
Do you feel like that so I feel like your story is, this wonderfully positive, um, opportunity to share what went right in
Mhm.
your care. So we'll kind of keep pulling back to that because that's something I know that we've talked about in the past, and I've actually gone to you and said, "Who are your providers? Because I need them for somebody else." And that's incredible. Like you've said maybe 3 or 4 times already, like, "I was privileged, I was lucky, I had these things, this went well, this is how they helped." And that is I wanna make sure that everybody out there hears that it is possible. It is possible for these things to happen. But when you're talking about that time when you spent with your one of the OBs and you started to have that acceptance of joy and hope and faith, how did that transition when, they said, "Hey, Aurora has to go to the NICU?" What was that like when you said you were walking down the hall, hearing your big giant baby, calling for you at the end? Um, were you able to apply that same perspective or to say, "Wait, I've done this before, I can do it again." How did that shift for you?
It was again very similar to the point you just made where um I think given, the tools that I have, the knowledge that I have, um, I would have probably thought I would be okay. I understand what's happening, but no, I was freaking out completely. And then also I was, still in pain myself, trying to process my recovery, but then also overwhelmed with that transition and what's happening. Um, but even then again, I think about the nursing staff that was there and the time that they took for me. I think we spoke once about, or I think it was based on a presentation that you shared, a concept similar to like fight or flight, type of response, and I was all over the place. But if there was not a dedicated staff present, to answer my questions or to reassure me or to provide transparency, which I think, um, was really a key factor for me because when you're able to receive communication, to understand what's happening, and not just being dismissed or not just, having justifications forced on you, but rather, having someone listen to you, receive your actual concerns, and provide a more concrete, tangible feedback that you can hold on to and and have something substantial to process for yourself. I think that made a huge difference for me because not only in my time there was I able to, learn more about how the NICU works systemically, but I was able to learn community wise what that means. I was able to learn what a nurse's experience is like, or what individuals who are supporting those in that position, what does that work look like for them? So I was really just able to get a full perspective of how things come together.
It sounds like you shifted your mind into kind of a student's perspective, like, "What can I learn from this moment?" Right? Which is your tools that you mentioned coming into practice, right? Is saying, "Okay, this is still happening. I don't want to accept it, but I'm gonna work on it. And how do I shift my perspective to see something that I can learn here?" And that feels really productive and beneficial because you were in a new experience, completely new. It's a funny thing when even families who maybe they have their it's a multiples pregnancy or a high risk pregnancy, uh, you know, you may even have a tour of the NICU. They may even talked about it. It's still nothing that we can prepare for. Like, and then I think about what you said, like, I have all these tools and if they're similar to the tools that I have a giant I always think about my imaginary toolbox that I bring around. It's like a giant trunk full of breathing techniques and meditations and physical movement and journaling. And I never thought that I would be anxious because I have all these tools. Like I have all that stuff. And even now when I think back in my pregnancy, I'm like, I can't believe I was like that. When you're in it, you can never know what you're gonna be until you're there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the same thing you just said about I can't believe, like, when you look back, I think, there's a lot of cases that we review and you hear that often when you look back. Which unfortunately, I think in a lot of birthing experiences, people, you're instantly a mother. So you're instantly carrying that load. You don't have time for yourself. You don't have time for, so, in a lot of cases, you may not even have time to reflect. Um, but even in the instances when we're forced to reflect, those are the moments where we really see so much. Because even I remember at that time, the hospital that we chose was relatively far from me, anywhere from like 40 minutes to an hour away. But I selected that because it met all my preferences for me to feel comfortable, for me to feel represented. So that was, the price I was willing to pay. The sacrifice I was willing to make. I had no idea that I would be going back and forth to the NICU every day. And then also trying to manage nursing, trying to as a first time mother, trying to learn what that is. And then I think I cannot even fathom how any of this would have worked without the support because even at that point in time, there was an amazing lactation consultant who, "Okay, okay, you're gonna be in the NICU, I can come meet with you there," or, yeah, like, little things that, to you, you're grateful, but in the reality of it, not every professional is willing to inconvenience themselves just to go above and beyond and provide that extra support, so, yeah, it's just a very like you said, when things are done right, when things go well, it changes every aspect of the experience.
Yeah, it's interesting you use 2 words there, uh, inconvenience. They're not
Mhm.
gonna inconvenience themselves or go above and beyond, so that was a phrase, not a word.
Yeah.
But what if that's not an inconvenience? Like, what if that's the standard? What if let's talk a little bit about what went right here. Okay, so and you tell me, we'll parse through it, but sounds like the people. First, you had the education, you listened to yourself, and you found the people that you felt were going to listen to you. These are words you said, so you correct me if I'm
Yeah,
wrong. We're going to respect you. You made a birth plan with these people. They allowed such a thing.
exactly.
Um, what else went right?
I think the openness and the
Hmm.
time, um, we know a lot of healthcare systems in general are overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So we see the outcomes of that in every facet.
Hmm.
But in this case, we see, yes, perhaps the same system of care providers that could be overwhelmed, but an organization that prioritized culture, uplifting patients' needs first, patients' status, understanding their being as a person first. Which, of course, in a lot of care settings, it's prioritizing health, prioritizing, are you good to go? But not necessarily, are you okay?
Mm,
So I think that difference was felt immediately. Um, so yeah, the
the
people.
people.
Yeah.
And then when you said, um, were you limited with your OB because a NICU experience, as you're beautifully sort of lining up here, the well-being in the NICU doesn't start in the NICU. It's really influenced by what's happening, like you said, preconception. I had these people who were helping lay out my plan for a birth or not, right? And caring for me so that I feel more like a whole person. Were you limited by where those care the OBGYN would have delivered? Did you have
Yes,
options there? You were limited. Yeah.
I had no options. It was like, this is the area, this is where we do everything. And like within a block radius. So like the private offices, the hospital itself. But then even, I mean, I think at the time I had a lot of options, a lot of information. I had, supported friends through experiences in birthing centers or at home, and was able to just really take all of it in. And I knew for me, I wanted to have a hospital birth, but only in a way where I was in community with the people providing care for me. And if I couldn't do that, then I would have to go back to the drawing board. But I think even in conversation with friends, I think a lot of people become limited. Just like how you were saying the options were limited. I think a lot of individuals automatically limit themselves when they're considering birth. Uh, or maybe limit um consideration of other options, maybe because they haven't seen it. Like, sometimes it's hard to process what we haven't seen or what we haven't experienced or what we haven't been exposed to. Uh, so I think about that a lot as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. It's almost a failure to dream that something could be better.
Mm. Right, right.
Um, and and you're right, the or you just go with what your friends or what's here or what's there, but you took what do you think drove you to say, "All right, my backyard OBGYN, I wanna go a little further because it has" what things were you looking for there? What were the drivers for that decision?
I think the drivers for me mainly were representation and being seen. And I think when we look at maternal care crisis, um, we see a lot of danger in the outcomes from racial ethnic disparities. So for me as a Black woman, I definitely wanted to make sure my care provider is Black. But then in reality, when we look at racial ethnic disparities and when we look at disparities based on discrimination, there's an intersection that is not often spoke about where, for example, just because I'm a Black woman and have a care provider that's also a Black woman, she may not believe in advanced treatment. She may be more holistic. We may have many differences, or maybe she holds other bias. I'm overweight, in a categorical analysis, I'm overweight, I have, pre-existing conditions. I I'm high risk just from hereditary concerns, from my age, all of those things. Maybe there were any other points at which she would discriminate against me, even if we're the same race. So I think, it's a thing of finding someone who sees you,
Mhm.
and all of what that means. Or even, um, if I wasn't in, a hetero relationship, or if my partner was also a woman, like how would I be perceived then? How I'd be treated then? There's a lot of biases that can come into play, especially when you're providing care in such an intimate setting for a family. So I think being able to find someone who sees you for all of who you are, was my number one priority. And if I have to drive wherever, and if I'm able to, then that's what I have to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it is in these difficult or, um, traumatic, challenging times that we know the difference between trauma and traumatization is usually people. It's usually someone else sitting with you, offloading some of that weight, giving you the language to communicate or to feel more comfortable or confident, to understand, to kind of offload a little bit of that, or to even just to be in community, you said, in community together so you're not facing it alone. So it makes perfect sense to me that it began with the people.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a very it's a very courageous thing that you did in doing that. And I say that because I see so many people, like you said, they sell themselves short, or it'll be fine, or they don't know, to like step out because it requires that much more. It's like seeking help when
Awareness.
you, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Did you find that same follow through in the NICU with those providers?
I did. I think the difficulty with the NICU was when I first learned how systemic measures come into play.
Hmm. Say more.
Right. So I even like so many frustrating. I remember you were sharing an experience about how some parents, reach the edge and reach their limits. And that was very much us as well. Whereas my daughter was doing way better, but she had to be cleared by XYZ physician to be discharged, and this had to be signed off by this. And that process, elongated our stay in the NICU even longer. We were ready to go. We were eager to, have our life. Um, but seeing, how a system, like how a hospital system, I know measures are set in place for a reason to ensure safety and to ensure, a more confident discharge for a patient. But I think for me at the moment, that's not an easy thing to process. And especially if it's not explained to you in a way that translates to something that makes sense. I remember there was one nurse that was so supportive, and she would see me, she could see my face and just see I was losing it. And I remember her, just sitting with me and like, "Do you have any questions? We're waiting for Doctor XYZ. But everything is good. Like, do you have any questions?" And I remember asking her, just at my wit's end, like, "What if I just picked up my baby and I left right now?" And she looked at me and she's like, "The police would be waiting for you by the time you got downstairs." And I was like, "Police?" Like, for my own child. Uh, then understanding once again, um, system guidelines that are set into place. that yes, as a business, as an organization with a lot of liabilities, yeah, it makes sense. But as a parent, some things are not gonna make sense at all. Uh, so that was, I think to this day, I still, it's one of the things I'll carry with me and I'll never process. Um, but yeah, just learning those little nuances and having to experience it, it was just mind blowing. Or then even in a sense of, thinking beyond myself, having, like, if this is my experience with a nurse that's communicating to me openly, with someone who's experienced in health services, but what if I had none of this knowledge? What if I had none of this understanding? You know, how would I feel? How would I even understand what's happening to me? How would I not feel threatened by that? So it's just something I carry with me. Like even into the work that I do now, I always carry these experiences and this um just priority of being able to step outside of myself and my experience to think, in the reality of what our world is today, what would this look like for someone else?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's Ruth Wilson Gilmore who taught me a long time ago, what are the conditions that result in this behavior?
Mm.
And that feeling that you had of like, what if I just take, oh, that's it. I'm at my wit's end. I'm just going to take the baby. Like, I'm just going to go. You're not the only one. We go through this a lot where people are like, I'm just going to go. I'm just going to go. Uh, and it's those conditions, it's the systems that that are influencing your feeling, your thought, your and hopefully not translating into a true behavior where you try to take your baby without permission. Uh, and once again, it goes back to without the systems being in place, and I fully appreciate what you say about carrying it forward into in your all your actions, and I do the same. Is instead of passing the judgment on an individual or maybe even on an individual system, like what are the things that are in play that are resulting in this? Like what was happening? Even you just gave a whole bunch of grace to a system like, well, you're a business and you have your liability and you have these things and it's easy for us objectively with distance to be able to do that, to say, okay, what's happening for this mother, father, parent? What's happening for the system that they have to do these XYZ things? But when you're living it, when you're in that moment and the fear is driving your days and nights and sleepless everything without someone explaining it to you, it all feels wrong. It all feels scary. It all feels like it doesn't make sense. The puzzle pieces don't even match. So you've talked a lot about in your work, which we didn't really get into too much. So together we do well, you lead and I follow. Um, Work around, infant maternal health, particularly the two main things that we're working on right now under your direction is maternal hypertension or gestational hypertension. And the second one coming is in mental health and emotional well being. What are things now that you've been diving into this a lot that you see um, trend wise? Is there something that's been surprising to you or that's just validated how you felt about or what you know of the world?
I think yes. Simply from the amount of serving that we do. And then I think also to speak on the alliance,
Mhm.
it's really an honor because I don't lead. I facilitate, I liaise, but we're able to bring together all of these stakeholders from a full scope of care, whether it's physical therapists or organizational leaders or midwives, doulas, OBs,
Hospital systems.
community organizers, administrators, right? Everything in between, activists. And we're able to put them together to make decisions to lead together. So that's all I can ask for. But I think trend wise or just things that really strike me in the work right now. One, seeing the alignment, because in touching base with all of these care providers, getting their feedback, getting survey results, we see people who care. We see people who are concerned about, social drivers of health. We see people who are concerned, about the reality of what's happening in our world, what people are dealing with, transportation, housing, climate health, um, all immigration status, all of these things that are affecting not just an individual's well-being, but their birth process, and what that experience looks like to them, even aside from delivery, just the resources that they may or may not be able to access, the care that they may or may not be able to be provided, and how all of those things are affected. So when we look at, um, things that are having a major effect on maternal mortality or infant mortality or maternal morbidity, we see um, pregnancy related or hypertension related deaths in pregnancy. And we also zoom out and we can see the outside factors that come into play. Like, so when we look at the intersection of climate, health, and pregnancy, we see how extreme heat affects pregnancy, especially here in Miami. We see how the same regions that are bright as red flags showing as extreme heat hubs in our city are the same regions that are reflecting the most high risk areas where we're having pregnancy related deaths. Or even with maternal health, we see a lot of those intersections of people lacking access to resources on a community level, but then on the other side of that, we see the increases of pregnancy, or maternal deaths linked to suicide, homicide, um, or even increased observations of threats for self-harm. And I think one of our stakeholders really leads us in keeping our North Star, which is for the Alliance, not just evaluating the systems in place, um, in a sense where we can find data driven solutions, but also keeping that focus on communicating and bringing awareness to what the reality is. So, like, even in a city like Miami, where we can have so many resources and so many organizations working hard to get funding and moving day in and day out, there are still many aspects in which a safety net is needed when we look at that transition of care. So, even in one instance, okay, you're in the NICU and you're not okay. Maybe you feel the change in your mental health, but you don't have time to deal with it right now. Maybe you spoke to a social worker, but it's not a priority right now, so you dismiss her. Then you're discharged home. And 6 months later, 4 months later, 2 months later, you're struggling. You're struggling to even find a motivation to do daily task every day, but now you're lost in this. You've fallen through the cracks of a care system, and it's on you, where it should never be just on you. So I think in the Alliance right now, we are working to make sure we do our due diligence in identifying those cracks. And very much as the Women's Fund Miami-Dade CEO Mario Meyer always says, working in the industry of gaps and needs. So if it takes a bit more surveying, if it takes, a better design to push out focus groups or a campaign that is more dedicated to a culturally sensitive design where people can be impacted, not just see a picture and keep moving. Then in the Alliance, I'm just so grateful that all of these professionals can work together and prioritize intentional care and intentional intervention, not just doing things to do it, but to pay attention to what our needs are in our community, what those gaps in transition of care are, what safety nets are missing, and that we can have all these professionals supporting each other, sharing best practices, and just providing that peer review, that peer space, because we don't get enough of it. We don't. We really don't.
Yeah. Yeah, it's absolutely true. It is providing a great, coalition, collective force, of all of us kind of moving in the same direction, um, for sure. So, I know you're a busy lady, so I don't wanna take too much more of your time. I'm wondering, you've shared so much today about the things that worked for you are the things it sounds like you wish for everybody, right? And that's, whether you intended for it or not, that is the work of the Alliance and the work that we do is also elevating the care of everybody because everybody deserves that kind of care. Um, if you could share with someone who's in the NICU now, maybe a similar journey, maybe different, right? Everybody experiences the same thing differently. um, what words of wisdom would you share with someone in the NICU?
I think, as cliche as it probably sounds, I I would share a reminder to give yourself grace.
Hmm.
Because even if you are an expert in the field, even if you are on your eighth, ninth child, or any level of experience that you've gained, today you're having a new experience. Where you're at right now, you're having a new experience. Where you're at right now, with a combination of where you're coming from, comes together to provide a new experience. So I think when we give ourselves a bit more grace, because I think even in so many instances in becoming a mother, in the process of transitioning into motherhood, even just being a woman, a lot of times we're so hard on ourselves, and we're pressuring ourselves. So with pregnancy, with birth, we multiply that sometimes. um and I think it's okay to allow yourself to have the human experience, or for me, I'm of Caribbean background, and it's very much, y- like a no worries type of thing. Like, keep it moving, it's fine, or you don't
Yeah.
need to cry. Yeah, but it's okay to sit in that experience, even if it's uncomfortable, if it's scary. I think if we allow ourselves to have a bit more grace in what we're experiencing, I think it allows us to become better advocates for ourselves and advocates for others in maternal health, and by prioritizing the human experience of it, we're able to be better care providers, better advocates, better public servants, and like I said earlier, become the people, the contributing people to changing that experience and those outcomes.
Yeah. And you're definitely one of those people. We're so grateful to have you in our community. So the other thing I want to ask you is if you were to pack a bag for the NICU today, so what one item would you put in there?
I'm like, do you want the good answer or the bad?
Both. Actually, now I want both. You can get 2. You can get 2 items just because you
I
let
feel
into it like
like,
that.
I mean, I don't think, emotional eating is like the thing, but sometimes you need a little distract. Like, it's amazing how far a little, maybe I'll say a healthy distraction would go. Um,
Mhm.
because if you're mentally weighing yourself down so much, sometimes you just need a little distraction, something that can bring you joy. Um, And even in my experience, so from the infant side, if I were to pack a NICU bag, something that really I remember, in my NICU experience, they had, like, come into the room one day, and my daughter had, like, a little, funny, it was like a onesie, and I had no idea where it came from or anything, but just the visual, the change in visualization from focusing on tubes and, whatever else is happening on seeing the distraction of her and this, whatever she had on, um, it kind of helped me to disconnect for a minute and to feel a little bit of normalcy for a minute, even if just for a minute. So I think I would pack something like that, like
Yeah.
something, something to make us to bring normalcy, to bring joy, to bring normalcy to the situation. So, because I even then in that experience, I know we're worried about, bringing the milk and bringing the ice packs and bringing this and bringing that, and we forget the things that fill our heart and the things that bring
Yeah.
joy to our heart. So I think throwing something like that in there, I would definitely do.
I love that. Yeah. A blanket or a little cute outfit that you've been planning to put on your baby if they can wear clothes, or just the hat if they can't wear whole clothes, or the booties or something. Yeah. I love
Yeah.
that. That's wonderful. Wonderful. Okay. And the last question that I have for you, we are in the business of hope. And I'm wondering, what does that mean to you? What does hope mean to you?
I think hope to me means um allowing yourself, or even just as industry leaders, as organizational leaders like yourself, like allowing yourself to um indulge in what it is to be a futurist, to kind of like what you said, envisioning a system where things are going right, where advocacy is prioritized, where compassion, understanding are held as high values for organizations and for care providers across the board. So I think, that gives me a lot of hope. And especially I think there's a lot of, I mean, in my career, I've always been oriented in the movement space and the advocacy space. And I think in some fields you can easily end up in like this doomsday space. But with maternal health, one thing that always makes me feel so hopeful is even the narratives, the storytelling is powerful. So when we're gathering qualitative data from focus groups, even just meeting someone who's sharing your experience or providing a space where people can hear from others, you're changing lives, you're impacting lives. Or even just by showing up. So I think in the space of maternal health, being able to build community has made me so hopeful, because it's one of the spaces where you're so lucky to see the outcomes directly. So all the seeds that you're planting, you see the flowers bloom all around you. No matter how challenging, the data may show things to be at the moment. Um it's still hopeful. Like it's good to hold on to those things because you know the impact you can have on people, and how you can empower them. So I think that's the hope that I hold on to.
Yeah, that's beautiful and really quite true. I thank you for sharing that. How is Aurora? She's 5 now?
Yes. She's
Tell us
5, and
about her.
I told you the other day, I am asking everyone for support and prayer, and if I'm like if I show up like a mad woman, you guys will understand, because I think it's funny, like in having friends and being in community with people, you hear about transitions in parenthood. You're like, yeah, yeah, you hear it, but it's really until you're in it, you're like, wow. And even just to see, you have a child and they have their own life. They have their own goals. They have their own likes and dislikes, their own preferences. And then also as a parent, trying to make the best choices with what you're given, the resources that are available to you when we think about education and safety. And there's so much to consider always.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's an interesting ride. But I love seeing the person that she is, and even my sister and I joke so much about how our childhood was compared to hers, and I'm like, they could never imagine, you know? Like, they could never imagine, like, even how carefree they are or how, joyful they are, so it's a good show to watch, and I feel like I'm never not entertained.
I love that. I love that. Again, taking that perspective of an observer or a student,
Yeah.
uh, just learning what you can and keep going. It's beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Val. This was, I mean, just a wonderful conversation, and you just provide such a beautiful voice and energy to me, to our community, to the broader audience here, and I'm really grateful that you decided to do this with your life. And for all of you who are out there, whether you're, walking the halls in the middle of the night, holding a baby new home from the hospital, or pumping, or on your way to the hospital, or sitting at your baby's bedside, Val and I want you to know that you're not alone, and that we look forward to sitting with you again soon. Take gentle care, everyone.